Well, welcome to Parliament House, ladies and gentlemen, for another Australian Institute of International Affairs Queensland branch event. My name is Paul Lucas. I'm the State President of the AIIA and the National Vice President of the AIIA. I'd like to welcome you here tonight. At the outset, can I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Yagara and the Turrbal people, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, sovereignty never ceded. Can I acknowledge some special guests tonight? Besides His Excellency, our guest speaker and Speaker of Honour, Mr. Gopal Baglay, but a number of other guests that we have tonight. Firstly, and it's great to see you here, Councillor Pai Augustine from the Ipswich City Council. Her first time here. Ipswich is our fastest growing city in Queensland and one of the fastest growing cities in Australia. And it's wonderful to have you here. Can I acknowledge Cheryl Gabatero, the Honorary Consul of the Republic of the Philippines. Great to have you here, Cheryl. And just a little note, we'll be getting you sooner or later to do a talk, I think, or someone from the Philippines, so you're not off the hook there. And can I acknowledge Amelia Chan, the Deputy CEO of Trade Investment Queensland, being here tonight. Before I tell you a bit about His Excellency, and we've had the pleasure as a council of meeting His Excellency before, and I'll tell you one thing about him, he keeps his promises because he told us he would come here and speak to us, and he is doing that. He is doing that tonight. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity of going to India on a Australian Institute of International Affairs Victorian study tour, and anyone who goes to India, of course, is blown away by the place. The sheer size of the country, its incredible history, but its incredible future. There are a few countries that have such a great past and such a promising future. And in a sense, they're part of a continuum, but in a sense, they're not. When you think of also the wonderful value that Indian people have placed over the centuries on trade, their involvement in Australia is not new. You go up North Queensland, there's Hindu temples there that aren't new. Their involvement in Fiji and much of the Pacific and Asia is not new. So in many respects, their increased partnership with Australia is less so something different as something more a development of where we're going. And I should say that as well, that we at the AIIA acknowledge the strong cultural ties between India and Australia. We're both Commonwealth nations, probably the two fiercest cricket rivals in my view. But we understand each other, I think, pretty well. Just to tell you a little bit about His Excellency, he assumed the position of High Commissioner of India to Australia in January 2024. Previously to that, he was the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka. He served in New Delhi in the office of the Prime Minister of India as the official spokesperson of the Ministry for External Affairs and in various other positions related to India's ties with her neighbours, Europe and multilateral organisations. His diplomatic assignments have been in Ukraine, Russia, the United Kingdom, Nepal and Pakistan as Deputy High Commissioner. He learnt Ukrainian in his first assignment abroad and speaks Russian and a few languages of the Indian subcontinent. He holds a master's degree in chemistry from the University of Lucknow. So I think you would say His Excellency is a polymath in the correct sense of the word. He's married to Ms. Beena. His interests involve yoga, long-distance running, hiking, mind training, and ways of harmonious and sustainable living. He likes to study religions and learn about cultures. Your Excellency, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much. I think two things I should have with myself. I have a glass of water and my notes at this talk. But thank you very much, first of all, for giving me the opportunity and welcoming me to the Australia Institute for International Affairs. It's, as I mentioned, it's to you last year, and as you mentioned also, it's been a great opportunity for me that I thought of availing of last year itself. And so glad that we are here.
Oh, you got one, sorry.
Let me begin also, as is the tradition in Australia, by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, and paying my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And also, in that context, as a representative of a diverse democracy, another diverse democracy, it gives me great pleasure to mention here that in the context of the respect to our indigenous people, that the President of India, the current President of India, happens not just to be a woman, but also from one of our tribal communities. Honorable Paul Nicholas, distinguished councillors, members of the diplomatic corps, including my own colleagues from the Consulate General of India, the participants who have joined us online. I would like to say a very good morning, very good evening, and namaskar to all of you. And thank you for your presence here today. I was talking to my acting consul and consul, Sushil, and I was wondering that at the end of a working day to be here for all of you is, to my mind, would be a challenge. But I'm very happy that you are here. And what I propose to do is that on the topic that we have to speak, I will speak briefly about India, what we are trying to do in our own country, how we are trying to structure those tasks in the context of the international relations and the international situation, and speak briefly about Australia-India relationship towards the end. But first of all, let me say what a great pleasure it is for me to be here in Brisbane itself, in Queensland. In my 1.5 years in Australia, I think, Sushil, I have lost count, please help me, it is my 7th visit or 8th, I don't remember. So roughly every 2 to 3 months, I have been coming to Queensland. And this is an indicator of the prominence of Queensland in India-Australia relationship. Our presence as the Consulate General of India here, which was opened last year, inaugurated by our External Affairs Minister in the august presence of the Honourable Governor of Australia, Governor of Queensland, and in the presence of some of the key members of the newly sworn cabinet last year. I think it's an indication of just not the prominence and priority, but also the partnership that is growing between India and Queensland. And I'm very happy to note that there has been frequent exchange of visits. So I think it is very apt, it is befitting that I should be speaking here on the topic that we have with us today here in Brisbane at AIIA. So thank you very much once again for this opportunity. Now, cricket, of course, is inescapable in any India-Australia conversation. The only question for me to address is whether I should speak about it at the beginning or towards the end or something else. But let me, on that note, congratulate Australia on its fabulous victory on West Indies. And I'm sure you will also feel happy that we won the second test against England. I would also like to appreciate the role which the Institute has played over decades in promoting awareness about the world in which we live in, the world that is around us, where we function, creating awareness about different partnerships. And I'm glad, as Honorable Paul Nicholas mentioned about the visit that you undertook, you went to India. I think this is a key focus of our interaction here, that we try to build as wide a base for mutual understanding and support for this vital relationship, and I will come to that. I think interactions like this and interactions between the think tanks of India and Australia, which are also growing not just in the field of strategy and defense and foreign affairs, but also in the field like social sciences, environment, engineering, economy, and a number of other areas. I think they are very important, and therefore we from Government of India, we attach great importance to facilitating and promoting these interactions. So today I look forward to a stimulating interaction and, of course, benefiting from your views and questions. To such a knowledgeable audience and followers of history and geopolitics, I don't need to mention in detail about India and the journey that we have had as an independent nation in the last about 78 years. But it would suffice me to say that our foreign policy is anchored as much in our contemporary realities as it is in our civilizational values. So at one level, of course, obviously the aim of our foreign policy, India's foreign policy, is to secure an external environment which is conducive to and contributes to our developmental objectives. And at another level, our foreign policy responds to our civilizational heritage, our civilizational values. When we try to promote and contribute to a more equitable world, a peaceful and secure world, which is anchored in rule-based international order and respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. In terms of responding to our own developmental challenges, I think it is perhaps worth recalling that at the time of our independence in 1947, literally and metaphorically, we were importing everything from a needle to a ship. But today, India has come to a point where it is not only the largest, it is not only the fastest growing large economy in the world, but is also producing, manufacturing in India, its own aircraft carrier, its own light combat aircraft, helicopters, but also delivering the benefits of technology and empowerment to the common people. Along the way, we have, of course, faced challenges from famines to natural catastrophes to unprovoked territorial aggression against us, and of course, terrorism, about which I will speak a little later. But to all those challenges and questions, we have found answers within a democratic framework and not by aligning with one bloc or another. So by virtue of our civilizational thinking and out of the necessity for us to grow in the environment that we were situated immediately after independence, by logic, by rationale, by choice, by also civilizational depth, our foreign policy has been and needed to be independent, flexible, and pragmatic. But at the same time, should also inform and should also correspond to what we have inherited in terms of our civilizational values. Today, the aim of India is to be a developed nation by 2047. The phrase in Hindi for this is Vikasit Bharat, developed India. Why 2047? Because that's when independent India would have completed the journey of 100 years. But what is underpinning our ambition to be a developed nation, a developed country by 2047? I would say that it is the transformational changes which have happened, which have gained not only momentum, but also acceleration in the last couple of decades. I will give you 2-3 examples. You would, of course, know that today India is a multi-trillion-dollar economy, fourth largest, perhaps, in terms of PPP. By 2030, or even before that, according to some estimates, likely to become the third largest economy. But if you look at the pace of it, it took us about 60 years, from 1947 to 2047, to reach the $1 trillion mark in terms of the GDP. The next 1 trillion came in about 10 years, and the next 1 trillion came in about 6 to 7 years. So obviously there is a critical mass, there is a momentum, there is an acceleration. And the transformation that we seek to achieve will be based on tapping on this momentum and increasing this acceleration through innovation, through indigenization, through promoting entrepreneurship, but also forging new and mutually benefit partnerships across the spectrum in various sectors, but also with different like-minded partners from various geographical regions of the world, including Asia Pacific. To understand the transformation and what it means to the people of India, allow me to quote a couple of examples. And these I will take from the field of technology. There are two debates today about what approach should we have towards artificial intelligence and what should we do for a more responsible development where we help sustain our planet. If you look at India's policy, it is just not based on pursuing development, but sustainable development. It is for progress, but it is also for people and also for the planet. There is no debate in India about using artificial intelligence. There is no debate in India in shunning technology. There is no debate in India whether we should use it or not. The only question is how best. And the reason for this lies in the simple approach that we have tried to use technology not just to pursue development or economic growth or targets, but to empower people. Artificial intelligence in itself, as we all know, is innovative, enhances efficiency, but also requires responsibility and inclusiveness. So India today has some of the most attractive data usage in the world. About 11 years ago, in 2014, when India launched the Digital India Mission, our national program, to digitize the economy, digitize the life of our citizens, and deliver the benefits of technology through digitization, we were ranked about 120 or 122 or 3 in the entire world in terms of per capita data usage. Today, India is not only #1 in per capita data usage in the world, but also has the cheapest data rate in the world. And of course, with 1.4 billion, you would expect that more the use of technology grows, more the use of data grows. India's contribution to the data itself and to artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence, as you all know, uses data. So India is a very rich, perhaps the richest source of the data in the world. The other example I would like to take is from fintech, the marriage between finance and technology. I remember in 2014, when I had just come back from my assignment in Islamabad, back to Delhi, the Prime Minister, who had just taken over at that time, launched a scheme to financially empower marginalized sections. You know, in India, today we have near universal bank coverage. That is, everyone, not everyone, but almost everyone has a bank account. But you would be surprised to know that this was not like this 10 years ago. Why? There was a rule which did not permit banks to open accounts that would have zero balance, which means even daily wage earners who would survive, who would earn who would like to just sustain their living from one day to another, would not have spare money, would not have the digital means, and would not have enough trust in the bank to go and put their money in it, even it is 500 rupees, or let's say at that time, about $15, US dollars. The government decided that this rule for the banks to have some minimum balance should be done away with. So with one stroke of the pen, the policy was changed. But that was not enough. The aim of the government was to bring complete transparency in the process of transferring financial monetary benefits to the people. So what happened is that we came up with what is called the Trinity of JAM, J-A-M. J stands for Jan Dhan Yojana, which means this rule which I mentioned to you, to allow people to open their bank accounts without having the necessity to keep any balance there. So this was the Jan Dhan Yojana. And A was the linking that bank account to their basic identity document, which is Aadhaar card, which is a biometric identity card, again, near universal in India now over the last decade and a half. And M is mobile, linking the bank account and the biometric identity number with the bank account. Now, it might seem simple, but its benefits are tremendous. I'm told that in the first year itself, we saved about 3 to 4 billion US dollars in direct benefit transfers to people who were receiving different types of government support. So you could imagine that the ease and the confidence and the people, the common people in the villagers in rural areas who could have access not just to technology, but also to receiving government's benefits without intermediaries, cutting out all the consequences of having the intermediaries also. So my simple point here is that even in the use of technology, and when we are trying to, for example, evolve frameworks like artificial intelligence, enabling tools from them, our focus is to get the benefits of technology to the common man. In artificial intelligence, for example, one app that we have developed, that has been developed in India, is to allow, and India, you know, is a country of many languages. Our constitution itself recognizes 22 languages for official correspondence, which means central government, the union government of India can receive communication in any one of those languages and should answer in that. And there are, of course, many more languages and dialects. An app a tool has been developed, an artificial intelligence tool has been developed to allow common people to be able to communicate across languages, not just Indian, but other international languages. And it's called Bhashani. Bhasha means language, B-H-A-S-H-I-N. The point is simple. We are trying to use technology for our developmental goals, and for that, it is imperative that we develop international partnerships. Nothing illustrates that area more than artificial intelligence, which I spoke about, and also another area which is also very relevant to our partnership with Australia and to Australia itself, which is renewable energy. Now, again here in India, the per unit cost of electricity is among the lowest in the world. In terms of renewable energy, we have our target of net zero transition by 2070. And we have delivered on our Paris commitments ahead of the time. Today, more than 50% of our total installed capacity of electricity generation comes from renewable energy sources such as hydro, solar, wind, etc. Our target is to reach 500 gigawatts of renewable energy production by 2030. And for this, you would understand the importance of critical minerals. We all understand the importance of having secure and sustainable supply chains, which are not subject to distortions or dominance. And this is where importance of Australia and India partnership comes in the boldest relief. But I will come to that in a few minutes. What India is trying to do in terms of our own neighborhood is to promote connectivity of physical infrastructure, connectivity of power, but also connectivity of people and ideas and thoughts. We have been by and large successful in this over the past couple of decades, bar one exception, which would, I assume, well known to all of you, towards the West. But all of these challenges, whether it is development or working for ourselves, as I said, is not about achieving something just for India, but also speaking about Global South, taking up that cause, and pursuing those goals in bilateral partnerships, in plurilateral partnerships, but also through multilateral fora like UN, G20, G7, BRICS, our dialogue with ASEAN countries, and of course, the Quad. We see our role as India's role as net security provider in the region, and also a first responder in delivering humanitarian assistance in the time of natural calamities, which strike regions such as the Pacific, but also to our east in particular, in the Bay of Bengal and beyond. So what I intend to mention here in brief, if I could summarize, is that India is not just an unmissable economic opportunity, but also a reliable long-term partner for meeting global goals. And again, if I could go back to the renewable energy aspect, we have tried to pursue our goals, as I mentioned, but also forge international platforms such as the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, Global Biofuel Alliance, and so that we can bring the international experience and benefits for the benefit of not just India, but also the Global South and the rest of the world. Our philosophy, as I mentioned, has been driven by just not seeking our interests, but by the dictum of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Sanskrit phrase, which means the whole world is but one family. And that is today the cornerstone of our approach to global issues. Our efforts are not just for India's own progress or progress and development of our 1.4 billion people, but the essential point is about, again, another Sanskrit phrase from the past, the prayer of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, may all beings be happy. But all this, I think, can be attainable only in an environment where we have credibility, peace, and security. As the world's largest democracy and perhaps one of the oldest democracies in the world, if not the oldest, India had the republics in the time of Buddha. For example, Buddha himself, as Prince Siddhartha, was born in one of the republics. The democratic tradition, which essentially means respect for the other person's views, is a part of our cultural and civilizational ethos. But the challenge that we have in our neighborhood, which challenges plurality, which challenges multiculturality, diversity, but also security, is a serious one. And that is the challenge of terrorism. And our view, of course, that you have heard our leaders speak about it, is that terrorism is the most serious challenge which humanity faces. In the recent past, we have had one of the most brutal terrorist attacks in India. Our policy is of zero tolerance to terrorism. We also think that a fight against terrorism can only succeed if there are no double standards. And when victims and perpetrators of terrorism are not equated. I think responding to terrorism universally in all its forms and manifestations, wherever it exists, is very important. And it should be a matter of principle and not convenience. Now, I think in the last part, I would like to speak a little about our relationship with Australia. This is a continent. This is not a country. And I make this point often, even in my public interactions, that I feel very proud that I'm the only Indian head of mission to a continent. We spoke about cricket. The relationship between India and Australia, cordial it had been, as it had been, was always, would bring the conversations around cricket, culture, and curry. But to quote, rather to borrow from Assistant Minister, Honorable Andrew Charter, Dr. Andrew Charter's book, which he had launched in about 1.5 years ago, Australia's Pivot to India. It has transformed from the 3 C's to the 4 D's of diaspora, democracy, development, and dosti. Dosti means friendship. But if I could also say that we intend to cover every alphabet of the English language at least. We are moving on to E's, which is E, which is economy and education, for example. If I could give you two most important examples of interaction between India and Australia, it would of course be in the sphere of defense and geopolitics, geostrategy, security challenges that we have in our region, Indian Ocean as well as Pacific. And there is a lot similarity. I would be happy to answer your questions on that. But suffice to say that in the past 6-7 years, Indian and Australian cooperation in both in bilateral and multilateral and plurilateral contexts in defense and strategy and security has grown beyond imagination. I would just say that 6 to 7 years ago, we could not have imagined that we'd be doing so many different types of complex military exercises. We would have the type of exchanges that we have today. Why are we doing it? Because we believe that a secure, peaceful Indo-Pacific is in the best interest of not just this region, but the whole world. And that is one of the key bases why we cooperate so strongly, both bilaterally and also as members, for example, of Quad. Critical mineral supply chains I mentioned earlier about. So our cooperation is essentially defined by the comprehensive strategic partnership, which is celebrating its 5 years this year. We have a very, very robust framework of interaction among our top leadership. I think our prime ministers have met in some form or the other 12 times in the last 3 years, in the current set of our leaders. Our foreign ministers have met at least 24 times, and I sometimes say I have lost count. In fact, I'm not keeping count now any longer. We have an annual dialogue between our 2 leaders. We have a framework dialogue between the foreign ministers and also 2+2, which means the foreign minister and defense minister dialogue. So this is a very robust infrastructure. And I would say Australia is a very rare example where India has all the 3: an annual leaders summit, a framework dialogue between the foreign ministers, and 2+2. Besides, we of course have ministerial commissions on education and commerce, and are trying to now create one on sports. Because sports, I mean, I'm in Brisbane. Of course, we know Brisbane is going to host 2032 Olympics. We have put in our bid for 2036 Olympics, India has. But that's not, the Olympics is not the only thing. Australia is a sports superpower. And our national sports policy, which has been just brought out last month in 2025, puts sports as a priority in terms of our national development goals. So if India has to look for partners in sports, who better than Australia? And where better to look at it? I'm here right now in Brisbane, so I would say in Brisbane, in the context of Brisbane going to organize the 2032 Olympics. There is a lot that we can do together, India and Australia, both in terms of looking after the region that we are situated in, the Indo-Pacific, but also delivering the benefits of our own experience to our smaller partners, whether they are in the Indian Ocean or whether they are in the Pacific. I would conclude by saying that now is the time to raise our ambitions. Now is the time to deliver in line with the vision of our leaders. And I think Australia-India relationship has never been better, but I think it is now at a platform where the trajectory is going to be very high. And I think we will see some wonderful developments in future. We look forward to hosting the Australian Prime Minister in India. Around the time of the Quad Summit, we expect the next bilateral summit to take place in India. So I can assure you, I don't know the dates. I don't think anyone knows the dates as yet, but I can assure you that I will have a very busy time. But out of that busy time, as many times as I can come to Brisbane, Queensland, or have interaction with you, either over here, or if any one of you is in Canberra, it will be a great honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think hearing about sports and everything, just I think I'm loud enough. Sorry. I just nostalgic about my time when I was expatriating in India. There's always this question of who do I support when it comes to cricket. An Indian-born Aussie, and you got a whole lot of white Caucasian male and female around me. Raj, who do you support? I said, I never lose. So with that, I said, I'll get you to stand here, or I might stand here. And anyone with questions, please go for it. I think this is chat mode, so while we are recording, it's not going to go on YouTube. So please ask the High Commissioner any question, difficult ones, and we need to answer them openly. So please, anyone, please put your hand up and say who you are and yeah.
Hi there, I'm Finn. I'm a political science student. I'm just curious, as you mentioned how India respects the rule of law, how would you respond to allegations of India killing a Sikh separatist in Canada? Okay.
Well, the response has already been there for quite some time, not just by our government, but as you know, even the process which is going on in Canada has not been able to give any shred of evidence for that involvement. In fact, I don't want to take names here, although it is still Chatham households. But the people who have been in some way associated with it or allegedly associated with it, there are lots of things coming out about them in terms of what their association and affiliations have been. I can also mention one thing to you, that this whole, I would say, impression created about Sikh separatism is a red herring. The students of Indian contemporary history would know that there was a problem in India in 1980s. Part of it, frankly speaking, originated within India, but part of it had support from elsewhere. And this elsewhere is not just our neighborhood, unfortunately. We were able to deal with that problem within our framework. I was in college, university like you at that time. And the time when I joined the diplomatic service, around 1992, terrorism as a problem had been solved in Punjab. And that's when actually Kashmir flared up, because some people could not see their project in one state fail and not try to have a similar project in another state of India. But that's another aspect. And we were able to solve it in a democratic framework. It was not the Congress government, it was not one party, another party government, which came to power through electoral means in Punjab. There have been consistent elections there ever since. I'm very surprised that I see and hear questions about Sikh separatism in forums which are not in India. In India, this is not a movement. In India, there is no Sikh separatism. In fact, and why would there be? I mean, if you ask me, Sikhism is a separate faith, but it is so intricately linked to the common and syncretic inheritance in South Asia that it is difficult to imagine why such a movement will sustain itself beyond a few years that it was there. But now that it is not in India, I do not wish to say who is sustaining it, but there are forces which for their own interest are trying to keep this movement alive in some form or the other. And speaking on that, since it is Chatham households, I can also say that we have good understanding of what is going on from the Australian government. But at the same time, I think I'm reminded of what your foreign minister said some time ago in a different context. They don't import, she was addressing a certain section at that time. Don't import your problems into Australia.
Thank you. So we'll have Paul Lucas.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a wonderful talk. The biggest export industries, the four big ones in Australia, are mining, then, after a lot, primary industries, tourism, and education. And some of the greatest consumers of Australian export education, whether in Australia or indeed in India, but mainly in Australia, are the Indian community. So it's critical for us, and it's in our interest as much as it is in the interests of India. We've seen several years ago issues, particularly in Victoria, that have been in terms of the treatment and reception of Indian students. That seems to have calmed down now. But we've seen in more recent time restrictions in the last federal election campaign on overseas students. I would put it to you that that's not the interests of either country. But would you care to comment on how Indian students see their reception and Australia's attitude towards them?
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm very grateful to you for your question. I can tell you these are the two areas which are the most significant, as I mentioned, economy and education. Before I go to answer the question that you put me specifically about the students and how they perceive the current context, may I also say that in economy, the progress that we have seen since the coming into force of ECTA, the Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement, I think it's been tremendous. Again, something beyond expectations, and shows you the result of partnership between two countries: Australia, rich in resources, rich in technology; India, not just a market, but a production house which can partner with Australian capabilities. Of course, with our skill pool as well. And since then, we have had a mobility and migration partnership agreement. There are now Indians who can come on work for holiday visas. So there is a greater mobility between the two, between the people, and it's in either direction. It can be in either direction. ECTA's benefits are, more than 40% increase in exports in both directions. Separately, 40% for Australian exports, 40% for Indian exports. So this benefit is tremendous. And as we go along, I think we will see more Australian companies taking technology and finance to partner with India and in India, because the scale of economy is available, and the market elsewhere is also available for the Australian products. Now, coming to education, why I mentioned a little in detail about economy is because there is a very similar analogous model for education. Australia, I would say, in terms of its popularity among Indian students, it is a more recent global destination, but a destination whose popularity has been growing among Indian students who wish to pursue higher education over here and research. And we see some of you. I think you are from Pilani. Yeah. Or you were from Pilani, yeah. Jacket. So here itself, Queensland University, they have an ongoing program with an Indian institute. Similarly, there's a lot more students coming now to study in Australia. I would like to say three things. One, we would like Australia to remain a preferred destination for the bright and the best Indian students seeking higher education. We are very clear about it. Second, Indian students coming here to pursue a 4-year course of research is not the only model. It is a model. It is a good model. It is a model which works well for Indian students, both in terms of pursuit of their education and further options, either in Australia or in India or somewhere else. It also works very well for the Australian universities and institutions of higher education. It brings a lot of benefit to the economy, to the universities, just by the sheer multiculturality of it also. But also, I understand that for one Indian student, 2 parents also come as visitors. That you can credit or blame our culture for it, because the parents will never let their children go very far, and if they go very far, not out of mind, certainly, and certainly not out of heart. But the important thing here is that we also see other models coming up now. As you know, Australian universities are opening their campuses in India, and opening a campus is again one sub-model of that model. There are different types of partnerships which are possible. A 4-year course is split into 2+2 or 3+1 or 1+3, whichever way. The joint projects being taken up to create IP, which has industrial and commercial applications, and these things are happening as we speak. So I think in education and research, higher education and research, there will be, in a democracy like India and a democracy like Australia, there will always be views about what the government should do There will be views within the government. There will be views outside the government, depending on which interest you are looking at. But the fundamental truth remains that higher education and research is one of our key areas of focus. And that's why, along with the Foreign Minister Framework Dialogue, along with the 2+2 on Foreign Ministry, Foreign Affairs and Defense, we have a ministerial commission on not just trade, but a separate ministerial bilateral commission on education. My third point is that education cooperation is not just limited to benefits in education or for a professional degree which can land you a good job. This is the bulwark, this is the nucleus for the future networks, which will provide tremendous bulwark to Australia-India relationship. Just look at what happened to India-US and India-Europe relationships since the 1980s or late 1970s. Youngsters like these were sitting here. They went to those countries at that time as techies to pursue their careers, to pursue education. And you know very well that many of them rose to top jobs in corporate world elsewhere. But those individuals, while they are important, but they are still few. Hundreds of thousands of more, or perhaps even more than 1 million, brought back their experience, their networks, their finance, their expertise to India, and became the key interlocutors between the economies as years and decades went along. So my point is that let us not limit the benefit of India-Australia interaction in higher education and research to just higher education and research. This, I know it, that this will be one of the key drivers of Australia-India relationship in the futures to come, because among your audience also, there's such bright youngsters sitting.
Thank you. You got a question there.
I'm Nick Yao. I'm doing a PhD in political science.
Beg your pardon?
I'm doing a PhD program at the University of Queensland in political science, and I'm from Shanghai, China. So my first question is, there is some dispute about the border between India and China. So do you see any peaceful settlement of this issue? And the other question is about corruption in India. I headed an international legal team back in China. My impression is the economy in India is accelerating, it's going up, but the Chinese is going down. So you are in a better situation. But still, what I heard is the corruption of government in India is quite serious. But my understanding, you have the separation of powers, you have free media. So why do you have the corruption, and how do you combat this issue? Thank you.
Yeah. So I know you are very smart because you covered two very different questions. And I'm just trying to think, how can I link the answers? Anyway, let me deal with the questions as they are, just as we are dealing with the border as it is. So to answer your first question, it's a legacy issue. India and China differed on the respective borders, and therefore it led to the 1962 war, and also later differences in the 1980s. But from the end of 1980s, we have had very good mechanisms of special representatives to address the border question. Now, this border, as you know, is in three sectors: the east, the middle segment, and the west. Essential point is that what was agreed in the 1980s was that pending the solution of the border situation, we will not have military hostilities. And therefore, the special operating procedures, or the SOPs, standard operating procedures that were evolved, it provided for patrols from both sides, the patrolling parties, which are PLA from the Chinese side and our Indian armed forces, will not carry firearms, will not carry weapons. And that held well for a few years. And I remember, as part of some of my responsibilities, which were so kindly mentioned by Paul, that this used to be a wonderful point for us and both for our Chinese colleagues to say that for about 3 decades, not a single bullet was fired on India-China border. Because those SOPs held place, what would happen is, because of perception of, a different perception of border, the Chinese patrols will intrude into what we will consider our area. And there our soldiers will stand with a flag, perhaps in Chinese, Mandarin, saying that this is India, please go back. And the Chinese would do the same when they think our patrolling party has intruded into what they consider the Chinese area, the line of actual control, or the ground line of control. This held good for a few decades, not just 1 or 2 years. And meanwhile, we continue to build momentum, we continue to build confidence, we continue with the special representative talks. Several rounds of them have been held. Border is not an easy problem to solve, not an easy question to address in India. What happened? And in this meantime, China also became a very important trade partner of India, a good economic partner, although we have market access issues for our products going into China. But the good thing is that the dialogue continued on all that, while we also tried to address border issues. However, something changed, first in 2017 and then in 2020. You all are aware of those details. What we saw was the attempt to change the ground situation in terms of deployments and perhaps the border by use of force, by use of military force, and develop settlements which are more or less permanent in terms of facilities, logistical facilities to provide for China's supply lines. So that resulted into obvious difficulties, but fortunately, we have now been able to agree on disengagement. I'm not sure how can there be or when can there be a solution to the border problem, but clearly the pathway to in the future will be that we respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, that we respect the desire for peace, that we maintain tranquility on the borders, because as we have said repeatedly, without tranquility on the border, the relationship cannot be normal. But once the disengagement process has begun, I think we need to continue on that path, but maybe more quickly. But that is up to the people who are negotiating it or on the ground. I'm happy to see that we have also agreed on resuming people-to-people interactions. For example, a very important pilgrimage for Indians belonging not only to Hinduism, but to also Buddhism and Jainism takes place to Kailash Mansarovar, which is in Tibet. This used to be an annual feature, and I have also done this when I had less gray hair in 20 years ago. It's a difficult one. There's a trek going for 22 days. The Chinese authorities in Tibet, they provide the logistical facilities on the Tibet side. So groups of Indian pilgrims go, both from the Nepal route and also the route through one of our northern states. And I understand that pilgrimage had to be suspended for about 2-3 years since 2020, but now it is resuming from this year. So there is, as countries both located in Asia, as large economies, there's a lot that India and China can cover. And that's why we cooperate in fora like BRICS, for example. But at the same time, this border is very important, not just because it is a border, but because the health of the border reflects a type of a barometer for the overall trust and confidence in the relationship. Now, you mentioned about corruption. How much? Do I have a minute?
You've got about 11 seconds.
Okay. I mentioned to you about the fintech, the Jam Trinity. What it has brought is, so the use of technology is ridding government machineries of the capability to humanly intervene in the life of the citizens. And that's essentially the direction in which we are moving. The 9 stacks of the digital public infrastructure that has been created in India, the use of technology to empower people, it is all towards eliminating and actually bringing governance directly to the people. The dictum we follow here as High Commission for delivering consular services is digitize and outreach. When people cannot come to us, we will go. This is the change which has happened in the last about 10, 11 years. Now they will always come to the government for receiving services, but this is now incumbent upon the government officials to go to the people and deliver services. And that is the big change. it's a change both of mindset and change in the mindset reflecting in the use of technology. Sorry, I took more than 11 seconds.
I've got one more question. Oh, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
We can do it afterwards. I think he will stay here for a few more minutes. He can do it. Grant, please. He's our secretary. Grant.
My name is Graham Kerridge. I'm the Secretary for AIIA Queensland. And it is indeed a privilege that we've had His Excellency here tonight. And thank you very much for being so candid. I particularly enjoyed it. I'm reading an Indian history book at the moment, William Dalrymple's latest book, The Golden Road. And I'm up to the part where Pliny the Elder, the Roman scholar, is complaining that the Roman Empire is being drained by the amount of money that they were sending off to India to pay for all the spices, the diamonds, the textiles, the silks, everything else that was coming out of India. It was very much the powerhouse for a good millennium of the world. So it's fascinating to hear the discussion about the trade development of India and its future direction. The AIIA, as you may be aware, has a very active program of events, but we also have an active program of linking in with students and younger members of the community, because it's very important for their development. And we have here two of our new interns, Harrison Howman is here, and Chloe Long is here. So welcome. We have several very interesting events coming up. Next week, we've got a fascinating event on the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide in Bosnia. And that will be led by Dr. Olivera Simic, who's a professor at the Griffith Law School. And we're also privileged that one of our council members will be moderating there, Dr. Jasmina Joldic, who also came from the Bosnian tragedy. So that should be a very, very interesting event. On Tuesday, the 22nd, we've got an event, Do We Have a Putin or a Russia Problem? And at that event, we've got Peter Tesh, who's adjunct professor at School of Languages and Culture at University of Queensland, and Dr. Matthew Sussex, who's an associate professor at the Griffith Institute, talking on that issue. And then in August, we've got a major event that I would encourage everyone who's got an interest in Australia in the current modern world. This is the world of 2025. We've got the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull, the former Prime Minister of Australia, who, as many will be aware, has felt very free in imparting his knowledge and perspective now that he is not tied to political parties. So that should be a fascinating event and a wonderful annual dinner. So that's on the 20th of August. And I strongly encourage you all to go on the web and register for those events. I also encourage you to go on the website and register and join AIIA as well. So thank you very much for coming along tonight. Thank you once again, High Commissioner. That was really a privilege to have you talk tonight.